Hey, howdy, hey, it's Wednesday, and it's time for Real Talk with Real Pros. I'm your host, Tom Houghton, coming to you live across the internet. Thanks so much for those of you who are tuning in. We're excited to go live with Nick Schiffer from NS Builders in Boston. Thanks for tuning in, Weber Stone and ACM Builder. Give me a wave if you can see me and hear me all right. Have a thumbs up if you've had a great Wednesday so far. I've been looking forward to this part of my Wednesday all day, so hope you have as well. Just want to say hi to a couple people. Again, I'll be joined in just a minute by Nick Schiffer from NS Builders, based in Boston. So super excited to talk to Nick. That being said, if you've got a question for Nick, feel free to use that question box down below. Be happy to throw Nick some questions from the audience here. So make sure you do that. Use that question box, and we'll get Nick on in just a second. Stay tuned. Again, hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in to Real Talk with Real Pros. So let's see if I can get Nick on. There he is.
What's up, Tom?
How's it going, Nick?
Doing well. How are you?
Great. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Yeah. Happy Wednesday.
Whatever day it is, right?
Right, that's true. Anybody can be watching this on whatever day. So happy whatever day it is when you're watching this if you're not watching it live. But for those of you watching it live, thanks for tuning in. We love to have a live audience. Again, if you've got questions for Nick that we'd like to throw questions to our guests all the time. So make sure you use that little question box down below, and I can pull up some questions from the audience. So thanks for everybody tuning in. We're going to get started here. First off by saying, hey, we chatted in April. It's now August. That's crazy to me that it was that long ago.
I feel like so much has changed since April.
Yeah.
I feel like, actually, I know for a fact in April when you were talking to me, I was probably much more nervous with what was going on in the world. Where today in August, I feel like our industry has kind of jumped forward with everything going on, which, you know, in one way is I feel like we're very fortunate, especially with a lot of these industries not seeing the same reaction to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like the industry is doing great, which is fantastic, but let's lead right into that because there's a question that I got. Who did I get this question from? Somebody asked a question. They sent in a question, so I apologize to whoever asked this question. Let me know in the comments if you're watching and it was like, oh, that was me. So they asked the question about, okay, so the industry is doing great, but are you concerned about coming towards the end of 2020, looking ahead and trying to figure out, like, is there a shortage in any products that you're worried about that you might, have an issue with the project that you've got going on?
I think the product, I think I said this last time, I don't think we've experienced that to the fullest extent yet. I think we're seeing that. We're seeing lumber prices skyrocket. We're seeing difficulties behind getting material or specific products. I know John from Vintage, he told the story on a recent podcast about a fireplace he was having a hard time sourcing. There's a lot of these specialty products that we're dealing with. Even maybe they're not something you're considering that the factory may have got shut down. So my forecast on that is, I think we're going to see this trickle through into the early part of 2021. And it really depends on if we have another, spike with COVID, and depending on how that kind of shakes out. But right now, I think we're going to see this trickle into early 2021 regardless. And that's just going to be increased material prices and longer lead times, which, I was having a conversation earlier with another peer of mine. And, in a lot of ways, I don't mind the longer lead time. I like the fact that we're having a little bit more time to slow down, and it's more acceptable to take a little bit longer time. I've always been one that I want us to be able to take the time necessary to do it right. And in a lot of ways, I think this is going to force a lot of people to slow down and focus on, the quality and execution rather than, focusing on just hurry up, get it done, hurry up, get it done.
Sure. Absolutely. That actually leads into the question that, our friend Matt Reisinger, he decided to join in the question game and asked, so he was curious about, are you seeing any new business inquiries come in still? And then what's your forecast for 2021?
So April, no. May, June, July, yes. It's been really interesting. We're actually starting a new construction project We actually haven't met the client. It was through Zoom, just like this, and met, walked through. We've done all Zoom meetings, and we'll probably continue to do Zoom meetings because they're an essential in healthcare, and they don't want the interaction. They're trying to separate. But beyond that, our inquiries have went skyrocketed, to be honest. We've filtered out a lot. We've been saying no to way more work than we ever have, just because we simply can't handle that much. And we're actually looking at projects, and we've just signed another project that they're looking at, 18, 24 months from now. So, which is fantastic. I like pre-planning. I like pre-construction. I like really thinking things through. So right now that, we have basically booked a solid completion of 2020, and the first half, maybe the first 3 quarters of 2021 are all slated for all these new projects. So our forecast is looking really great. We've been very fortunate to connect with some people. I think there's a lot of things leading to that. We do a lot of work in the city, and some of those clients that we've worked for in the city are leaving the city. They want more space. I think we're seeing that across the nation, at least, Boston and New York. I hear a lot about. A lot of friends of mine have left New York City. They're looking to build elsewhere. So I think between that and just the fact that people are in their home realizing that I'm spending more time here, I was escaping it before when I was going to the office. Now I'm not. I need more space. I want my family to have a better house. Here's the opportunity to do it. So I think there's a lot of things leading that. And that's why I think, I believe our industry is really seeing this upward, momentum.
Yeah. And I have to commend the East Coast. It definitely seems like the data that I've seen from like John Hopkins tracking, like the East Coast has kind of got this thing on lockdown a little bit. Like you've definitely like slowed the curve there of the increase. So that's really good sign.
Yeah. I can't speak to that, professionally, but I do, the way I look at it is I think we just were hit first, and it skyrocketed, and parts of the country just didn't think it was going to trickle down into their space. And when we got it under control, it spiked in other parts. So I think, I think back to early March, I remember having a conversation that we might need to shut down for 2 weeks so this goes away. I don't think any of us really understand the real impact of this and how widespread and fast it can spread.
Sure. How is it impacting your job sites right now?
We've so different cities have adopted their different rules, but one of the cities we work in is in Cambridge, and they have the most strict rule. So what we did is we actually partnered with a safety officer and got basically a COVID plan put together to understand our, the necessary steps and precautions to take on the job site, make sure we have all the necessary signage. A lot of these permitting departments are requiring a COVID safety plan in order to get a permit. So we're putting all of that in place. We've put all of that into place. So in every job we do, we're submitting a full plan. And then beyond that, on site, everyone's, practicing, social distancing. We have hand wash stations, dedicated bathrooms, signage, doing the temperature scans, things like that.
Yeah. Are you having to keep track of all that on paper or digitally? What are you doing there?
We are. So the city of Cambridge, they actually require you to submit it each week digitally. So the guys are keeping a log on site on paper. So we're just, guys are signing in each day, and we're scanning that at the end of the week and then submitting it against our COVID permit.
Yeah. That's awesome. Again, if you're just joining us, I'm chatting with Nick Schiffer from NS Builders in Boston. Let us know where you're watching from. I think I saw somebody from Winnipeg, Canada. They got Cut Right Tile Insulation. Says they're super busy too, which is great. I noticed you mentioned earlier about people from New York leaving kind of the major city centers. I know I read an article yesterday about people from San Francisco and the Silicon Valley leaving. Again, just to get out of, since they're not going to work there,
right.
You might as well move to somewhere else if you can still work remotely. So shout out to LA and NYC in the house. That's awesome. So let's talk more about your projects that are going on. Obviously, it sounds like you're super busy, which that's awesome. That's great to hear. How many projects do you currently have in the hopper right now?
Well, active right now we have 3. They're all in actually really great spots. They're all in a phase where we're kind of wrapping up. That will take us into the fall. But we have 2 projects that we're about to kick off just in the next 2-3 weeks, maybe sooner, depending on some final decisions. And then we probably have another 2 that will start sometime in the fall. It's a good spot. We were in a really good spot with our projects where, we didn't have to really stop anything. And the only delay that we've experienced is that some of the jobs that we're going to be starting in the next 2-3 weeks, we would have started earlier, but permitting was shut down, or there were delays on trades, or just things didn't align correctly. But what that allowed us to do is really get the projects that we are working on, up to speed. One of the projects that we're working on right now actually only came about because of COVID. One of our jobs got shut down back in March or April. So we took on a project that was kind of just sitting there waiting for us to start. So we took that on, which was difficult when our other project opened back up. There was a lot of bouncing back and forth, but we made it work, and we're in a really good spot. And it's giving us a lot of time to do all of our pre-planning. We've actually made 7 new hires since March, or since April. Yeah. And a lot of it has been process oriented, some carpenters, but some assistant project managers that have really helped us dive into our processes, and making sure that when we get into these new projects coming up, that we're dialed in, which I think beforehand we just didn't have the time to catch our breath in order to dial in. There were these baby steps throughout our career where we've made huge leaps in the last 3-4 months.
That's awesome. Do you feel like the slowdown, or like the intended slowdown, I guess, has helped with that? I think something that everybody struggles with is like building the train tracks while the train is moving down the rail.
That's literally how we were doing it before. And
Yeah.
I think now that train's just moving a little slower, or it was. We're starting to pick up speed again. But it was, and it was frightening to see the slowdown and think that, are we gonna have to lay people off? Are we gonna have to shut down? And then when we started ramping back up, I realized that this is the opportunity. We're standing on the edge of the cliff, and we got a parachute strapped to our back. Let's go for it. And that's when we decided to make some new hires, bring in some new people, and sit down and collectively work as a team to really rewrite some of the processes that we were struggling with, and just outlining what we need to outline to allow our team to operate at a much higher efficiency.
Awesome. Shout out to our friends watching from across the pond overseas. Appreciate you tuning in. Again, if you're just joining us, we're having a real conversation with Nick Schiffer from NS Builders in Boston, Massachusetts. So Nick, obviously with all these projects going on, one of the question I had was, like, you obviously do home building, but also remodeling. Do you feel like it's leaning one way or the other, or is it split 50-50 on that?
I would say we were more remodeling before, and then very little new construction, and we're starting to trend towards 50-50, which has been our goal all along. Right now, we're getting more inquiries for new builds. And I think that's because of the city really drives a lot of our remodel, and being that a lot of this stuff is outside the city, a lot of people are, a lot of our one client just bought a lot. Another one is looking for a lot to build a brand new house. We're doing a couple tear downs where they've purchased, lots, and they want to rip something down and build something new. So I would say right now, yeah, our split is definitely about 50-50.
Yeah. I was going to ask, so obviously part of it, I guess, hang on, sorry. One question just came in here. Is myself an admin, what role should I hire next? Ooh, that's a fun question. Hiring people. Let's talk about your team a little bit.
Sure.
So, and this actually leads into another question I was going to ask too. One thing I love about you, Nick, if I may be so honest, is that your dedication to the details, that you're not going to just accept mediocre work.
Yeah.
So that's not just you though, that's got to go through the entire team.
Right.
So how do you get your entire team? Is that just you've got to find those people? Is this something that can be taught, or
Yeah, for sure. I think it needs to be taught, but it needs to be, they need to understand it's acceptable, and we've deemed it like the rip it out mentality. So there's, and it's costly. It's costly to go on a job and look at an access panel that's an eighth of an inch smaller than the piece of register that's 6 inches above it, and for me to say rip it out and order a new one, because in my mind I'm like, someone's going to notice it not line up and they're never going to forget that, where the likelihood of them noticing is very, very low. And we could leave it, and it's going to, and that particular access panel is going to cost me $500 to replace it. But at the same time, that's just how we operate. And it's not because we're, I want to kind of kick this, this bucket here, is that it's not because we're making a ton of money on the job. It's just that's how we're going to operate it. People are paying us, a premium, I'll use air quotes, to execute at the level that we do. So if we're going to let something like that slip, what says that the next thing can't slip? So your question about the people and them understanding that, I think it's a process. And I've talked about this before in the sense that for 12 months, we'll use as an example, is probably a good amount of time for someone to be on this team to ask a lot of questions like, hey, is this okay? Hey, what would you do here? Hey, what about this detail? 12 months of that, they stop asking. And then when I show up and I see something ripped off the wall or the corner bead ripped out of the corner of the plaster, and I ask the question, he's like, yeah, I threw a level on it. It was a 16th out. And that, like, as much as it hurts, I appreciate it, because it's like these guys understand that it's almost like a challenge for them. When I show up, Mike will say it, one of my project managers, he's like, I wait. Like, you walk around and I'm like, please don't say anything. Please don't say anything. Please don't. And then it's like, hey, Mike, can I talk? And he's like, no, what did he catch that I didn't see? But it can be taught, and it's not, and I think you had a question regarding this same level of craftsmanship when you were working on a tight budget. I think this attributes right to that. This doesn't mean it's only high-end stuff. I mean, you can be doing, let's just use speed base instead of like a fancy baseboard, right? You make a bad cut. I could caulk it. You could, but why not just recut it? Like, you take the time to recut it, because if you just caulk it and then paint it, you've told yourself that that's acceptable. So when you do it again, you're going to make it acceptable again. When you stop yourself immediately, like, don't go back to don't put it in and then think about it overnight and then go back the next day and rip it off the wall and create more damage. Just make the decision right there and then and say, nope, that doesn't fit right. I'm going to cut it again. And I get it, that's time, that's money, all of that. But if you replace it and fix it then, the chance of you doing it the next time is less, because you're going to realize why you made that mistake, and the fact that it took you an extra 17 minutes to fix it. You don't want to waste that 17 minutes again. And I think when you challenge yourself, even on the smallest details and even the lower profitable jobs, you're constantly refining yourself to be in a position where, when you do have to execute at a high level, you're not then trying to adapt your process. And I mean, to elaborate on that for a little bit, when you're installing interior trim, pretend it's stain grade. Pretend you can't go back and caulk it and cover it up and paint it, and like nail it off like it's stained. Coat the inside miter, like it's stained. And if you're doing that all the time and all you do is paint grade work, and then someone hires you to do a stain grade ceiling, you're not then trying to reinvent your process. You're already there. You're refined. You got this. And I think that's really, I go back to my original, my opening sentence is that they have to understand that that's acceptable. So that when your employees realize that we are looking to achieve and produce at our highest level, and that's what's expected of me, you can't then come back and be like, what the hell is taking so long? It's like you have to allow quality to get to a certain point, and efficiency will follow. Because if you drive speed first, just like you said with the train, that train's going to be going 100 miles an hour and you're only putting track in at 70.
Right.
So you have to put that track before the train, and you have to really put that quality first and allow speed and efficiency to trail behind.
Yeah. So let's pull on that thread a little bit longer, and then I'll get to some of these questions that came in, just since we're on the topic of quality.
Yeah.
Because we had one viewer ask about, does quality always mean it's more expensive?
Right.
I think there's definitely a correlation there, at least from an end user's perspective, that, oh, if I get 3 bids, if I take the top bid, that probably means I'm getting the most quality. What's your thought on that?
Specifically to that, that's not true. I mean, maybe the guy doesn't want the job and he's throwing you a high number.
Right.
No, I mean, it goes right back. Like, quality doesn't mean it's expensive. Quality might take more time, which I guess equates to more money, but that doesn't mean, it's a difficult question, because also, quality is like, oh, well, quality is a two-piece baseboard instead of a one-piece baseboard. It's like, no, it's the level of execution and care that someone puts into their work. And I think that's what it is. And, from the 3 bid example, ignore, like, I don't believe in the 3 bid process. You need to understand what they're about, who they are as a builder. If you're talking to, I guess we're not really talking to homeowners, but, if we were hiring a subcontractor and we were bidding painting out to three painters, and one guy came back super high, we had a middle guy and a low guy, we're gonna probably give them all a pretty equal opportunity, and want to, interview them and understand their process and talk to them and ask them important questions. And important questions for us would be, specific to paint, how they're prepping, what products they're using, what is their process, what do they, are they sanding the wall, like all of these questions, and then maybe walk one of their projects and see the execution. Maybe they're really cheap because they only have 2 guys and no overhead. Or maybe they're really expensive because they have 50 guys that are all crappy painters and a brand new office building.
Sure.
So it can't be number driven. It has to be, you have to do a little bit of homework there.
And it sounds like it's about the relationship, right? So you want to build that relationship. So it's probably good for people who are watching and thinking about submitting that next bid, that it's not just about the numbers on the piece of paper or the digital, whatever email you send over. Right. It's about that relationship that you're building there and proving your worth through the work that you've already done.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, builders deal with it all the time. When an architect gets 3 bids, and it's like, are they just going to wipe mine out because I'm the most expensive, or am I going to get wiped out because I was the cheapest because I accidentally forgot the foundation? I don't know. Like, there's so much to this industry that, to simply look at it based on the price of anything is foolish, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let's go with the layup question here from Krista Baller. See what I did there? Layup question, Krista. Anyway, sorry. It's just me around here. So I've just got to make up my own jokes. What do you prefer doing? New builds or remodels or rebuilds?
Man, I honestly like them both. Well, you said 3. I would consider new builds and remodels. I like them both for very different reasons. I'm trending towards doing more new build because I want the control, and there's a sense of like ownership from everything, from the concrete footings all the way up to the ridge cap. Like, we've owned all that. Remodel, I like the challenge of it. I like uncovering things and then trying to be really creative with what they might look like. But at the same time, the difficulty behind remodel is that if you aren't touching the entire home, you usually get a warranty call on something that wasn't yours to begin with. So it's I'm gonna trend towards new build.
Okay. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. You can control everything there. I know. I feel like we talked about this when I was out there last year and we were chatting. That you guys document as you kind of go, you're documenting, you're taking pictures of stuff that's behind the walls and things like that, right? So that way, when you pass it off to the homeowner, years down the line, that's also something you have. So when they call you back because you've made a great relationship with them, you already know what's behind that wall, so you're not walking into that surprise and being like, oh, that's right, that's, there's some hidden pipe behind here or something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's really good. That probably leads into our next question about how you manage projects from a project management perspective. Any best practices that you'd recommend?
I feel like we operate a little bit in a unique way. So our project managers float the role between job site super and project manager. And what I mean by that is that they live on site. So they're typically running 1 or 2 projects at a time. So they're, site superintendent, but they're also project management, where they're doing the document control, schedule updating, communicating with the client, and budgeting. But the reason I want them on site is because of the level of expectation I have and the extreme amount of detail that go into our projects. It's really important to have that touch, where we take a little bit of a hands-on approach, in the sense that the project managers are going to get right beside those guys and try to figure something out and help coordinate the trades in order to achieve the very best result. Underneath them, recently added to the team, is assistant project managers. So they're coming in to really help the process control behind the PM. So, being the connection from, the office to the field. So they're splitting their time field and office, but really being a support to the PM to make sure that, the process control documents and things like that, everything is being controlled, in accordance to the way we want to work. But we're not just a management company. We also have a team of carpenters on staff. So that PM is also overseeing the carpentry, typically overseeing the lead, and the lead oversees the carpenters. And then we have the millwork division. So we're kind of like management, carpentry, millwork. And then our millwork shop, Ken runs the millwork shop, and he's overseeing design and fabrication of cabinetry, and then coordinates with the PMs for the install. So the question was advice for that. I think the one piece of advice, and something that, I don't want to say struggle, but the one thing that we're working on constantly is communication. And I thoroughly believe that if you can be a good communicator, that's honestly probably the one thing that, if you can focus on really good communication with your client and your trades, then you are immediately moved to the top spot in their mind. And for that, we obviously use the daily log feature in Buildertrend on a daily basis, and then we're recapping our week. Hey, this is what happened, and this is what we're forecasting for next week, every week to the client. So going into the weekend, they're not worried about where we are, what's happening next week. Do they need to meet with us? They're getting that information, and we're using the schedule tool, and the estimating tool, and the bid tools, to make sure that our subcontractors have all the information that they need. We're sharing all the documents, and they're plugged into it, and they're getting updated as this project progresses. And just, the APMs are really just like, hey, following up, we're projecting, we had a small schedule change, and we're looking like the tile install is going to be pushed out a week, just keeping you in the loop. So I would say by far communication is number one to focus on.
Absolutely. I mean, great communication is super important, especially nowadays when everybody's working remotely. There's a lot more remote work happening. So it's not like you can just swing by and say, hey, obviously that might not be socially acceptable. So how do you stay on top of that? I'm curious to pull on that thread too, and just say, how important has technology been in your growth process? Because like you said, you hired on 7 new people, so now you got so many more team members. What role has technology played in that?
A massive role. Is that a good answer? No, we do. We use a bunch of different technology. We're using it in all facets of the business. From a marketing and sales, we have Doug on staff who's producing video. So there's a ton of technology on that side of it. and we're utilizing that to, share our process in a marketing side, but also share with our industry peers and helping kind of like, raise the tide for all the boats. And then from a technology and with communication and clients, I mean, that's everything. Email, the Buildertrend, the way we process, the way we're pricing our projects, the way we're estimating our projects, we can, there's a lot that we can do remotely and behind the screen of our laptop and not have to be involved day to day on site. That's been huge. And I think with COVID specifically, we've adapted a lot of additional technology, to our company. Zoom meetings, I said last time in April is that that saves 3 hours out of my day. If I do a Zoom meeting instead of driving somewhere to meet with a client for an hour and then driving back, I can fly through it in a Zoom meeting. Contracts, we're not sending a PDF that they have to print, sign, mail us back. We're sending it. It's, hey, here's the document. They open it up. They can scan it, sign it. It automatically sends them a copy, me a copy, done. So, those were a lot of the things that we implemented when we were slow, and we're able to kind of put these processes that were, chalked up on my whiteboard over here, like, hey, things I'd like to do one day.
Right. It's a good list to have in your back pocket.
Yeah.
In case of a rainy day. Yeah.
Yeah. When I need something to do.
Yeah. There was a question earlier from ACM Builder saying, have you seen any spike on any ADU inquiries? Do you guys do any ADUs out in that area?
We have one, possibly two projects that we're going to be doing ADUs on. So I don't know if I'd consider it a spike. I think it just has to do with these particular projects. They're multiple acres, and it's, kind of just, I guess when you have multiple acres, you kind of have to put more than one building on it to make it worthwhile.
Sure.
But other than that, no, I wouldn't say it's been this huge spike for us.
Sure. We got a couple other questions here that came in. We talked about lumber prices already a little bit. Maybe we can recap that. This question came in. Do you see lumber prices going up in the past few months?
I do. To be honest, I don't have a really great pulse on it, only because where we are with our projects right now, a lot of this stuff has already been procured. So right now I'm starting to see the beginning of it with a lot of this new pricing coming in. But I'm seeing the reports come in. Some of this stuff is, 100%, 70%, 100% more. So it's definitely evident. I just don't have a daily pulse on it, I would say.
It's good. I really like this question here. As a homeowner, what is the best questions we can ask to vet a contractor that are appropriate? Oh, sorry, I got cut off there. That are appropriate and not insulting is the end of that question. Questions to ask a contractor.
I would say just ask them about their process. Ask them what what is the process like? Walk me through step one. I think as a homeowner, you don't want to come in and say, well, listen, I've already done this before. I know how this works. You're going to give me a price and I'm going to negotiate. Just let them walk you through it. And I'm going to speak. This is similar to how I would vet a new subcontractor. So I'm going to speak kind of in both those terms. But, you're working with a potential builder. Start asking them, like, I'm thinking about thinking about building a home. Can you walk me through what that process looks like if I decide to work with you? What does your pre-construction process entail? Do you, are you going to be able to bring me an architect? Should I bring the architect? Figure out where they're comfortable, and then understand, well, what do you need from me as a homeowner to start understanding, the scope and the budget and the schedule of the project? They should be able to answer that in some way. And for us, it's going to be, we're going to work together with the architect to develop the scope and develop the budget and schedule kind of in unison. Some builders want that design entirely done so they can price that once, so they're not working, necessarily in unison. But, it might be important to work in unison because there might be a really hard budget to work within. And if an architect designs something that's wildly over budget, well, that only makes the builder look bad, even though the builder wasn't involved. You know, when they come back and, hey, my budget's $1 million, but here's my design, and you're at 1.5, it's like, I told you how much I could spend. It's like, well, you designed something. So I think working with someone that is open to being collaborative, and understanding their level of comfort with collaboration is really important. You know, I would consider myself a collaborative builder, and that doesn't mean, you know, that we only work with architects, or we only bring our own architects. It just means that we're open to how that process works, but we want to make sure that we all work on a common goal. I think other questions would just be understanding, you know, how they're financially structured. You know, is it a time and material, cost plus, fixed fee, fixed cost? What happens if something changes? You know, what if the scope isn't defined? You know, are you putting allowances in there? What are those allowances? What are you assuming? If something isn't specified and it says, you know, install a deck off the back of the house. Well, what are you assuming? Are you assuming AZEK? Are you assuming EPA? Are you assuming pressure treated? Make sure that the scope when they're communicating with you is, you know, at least something is assumed, and that's communicated in writing. So.
Yeah. I also think I was talking about this with another homeowner actually, they asked me like, oh, hey, have you heard of this contractor? They're local in our area. And I said, actually, yeah, I follow them on social media, and you should check out their work. And I just want to say to everybody watching how important it is to showcase your work so that people can go check it out. I mean, like you said earlier, doing like a site walk, it's kind of hard to do that, to see people's previous work with COVID right now. But if you have pictures of your work and you do really great work like how you do, Nick, I mean, the stuff that you post on your profile, I'm going to pull up something because I absolutely love it. The wall here.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That you did. I mean, yes, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Where do I sign up? You know?
That wall is, we'll call it a labor of love.
But
it's an amazing piece. But Tom, to that point, I think, you know, let's speak to two different people here. Let's speak to the builders. Absolutely, they should be promoting their work and sharing their work and showing what's great at. But to the homeowners, you know, it's a delicate dance. You can't judge someone if they don't have the website or social media. That doesn't mean that they're a bad builder. That just means they're a bad marketer.
Right. That's true.
And that doesn't, you know, that like, because I find myself in that position too, where it's like maybe a subcontractor reaches out and like, they don't even have an Instagram. Like, how am I going to tag this guy if he works for me, right? But in the reality, it's like the guy's a craftsman, right? You know, he's like, I don't have the time for it. I'm one man. I just want to do my work and get in and do a really good job and move on. I don't care about pictures. So, you know, it is tough with COVID, but back to the professional side, because I'm sure most of our audience is professional. Absolutely, documenting and sharing the work that you do, because you should be proud of it, and you should be comfortable with taking a photo and sharing it online, because that means you step back and you are proud of it, and you say that is what I intended to do.
Absolutely. And it all goes back to what we talked about earlier about the relationship side of things. I mean, that's ultimately what you're doing through social media, is you're building a relationship with your viewers. In the same way, if you don't do that, if you're not using social media, you know, you got to build it a different way, right? So you can have those personal relationships, like you said. You know, the guy's a great craftsman because you know them, you've seen their work. So you just have to be creative with how you build that relationship. There was a question that came in here from BHDB Ben, said that as you transition to building more homes than just remodeling, how do you think your experience as a remodeler will help you make that move easier?
That's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer it, but I think, you know, in general, the consensus is that remodeling is more difficult because there's more challenges. And John Horahan from Vintage always says it's like building a house with a house in the way. But I think what it has taught me, renovating in general, is how to be creative with situations and be solution based. So, you know, rather than assuming how something's going to come together, being able to react quickly and creatively in the moment. So in new construction, despite having complete control over the new build, there's still going to be a hiccup. There still might be an issue that you run into. But what remodeling has taught me is that there's always a solution, and you need to react quickly to it, but also do it in a manner that's creative, but also and also holistic. Meaning, like, you're not just making a change or you're trying to fix something, just in this space, but whatever you do here, remember that it's connected to everything else, and it has to look intentional. Intentional is a big word in our company. Everything needs to be intentional. So I think remodeling has really pushed us and challenged us to be intentional when sometimes it was difficult to do so.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up real quick with just one other question that we had come in was about trends. So let's wrap up our discussion on some trends that are happening in your neck of the woods. One question I think we had that came in was the latest trends in kitchen cabinetry that you're seeing.
Colors, like some pretty vibrant colors. I'm seeing that a lot. And then I'm not going to take credit for it, but I see a lot of grain matching up. I shouldn't even say me. I'm not going to let Ken take credit for it. It's a lot of grain matching out there. I think it's just being more creative with, wood and wood grain, and mixing that with, we'll call them automotive high gloss finishes and things like that. That's been, pretty trendy in my world.
Yeah, it's good. Last question is one question I ask all my guests is, next time I'm out there, where are we going to grab a bite to eat?
Oof. Depends on what's open.
Yeah, that's true.
But I did think, I think I promised you that we would hit up Del Frisco's for my favorite steak. So
there you go.
I'll stick to the plan.
All right. We'll put it on the calendar for a while out. I mean, who knows how long this thing's going to last, but we'll make sure we do it.
If they're open.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming on and chatting.
Definitely.
I know I appreciate your time, and I know everybody else here watching as well from all over the world. Thank you so much for all the work that you do for our industry to help rise the tide. That's really great, and keep that up. And we'll see you around online. If you're not following NS Builders, make sure you give them a follow, and check out their YouTube as well. Shout out to Doug, doing great work on that. Love watching those videos. So
appreciate you guys.
All right, see you later.